I wonder how things are going for Volodymyr Zelensky. This says he looks busier than ever, as right now, in the making of this video, Donald Trump is speaking about his upcoming meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska this Friday, which looks like it is going to be a major, severe deal that will be worked out, hopefully, towards peace, or else there's going to be, quote, very severe consequences. What in the world's going on here, as the situation on the battlefield is also changing very quickly, and it looks like Zelensky isn't too happy, as very oddly, him and the European Union have changed their tune here. And are they doing this because they are forced to do so by Donald Trump? Why is Donald Trump doing this? As, of course, his policy decision-making on this type of issue has been kind of all over the place here, as there's a military assessment here that I wanted to talk about here that I think has a lot to do with what's going on now and how there could be a bigger potential conflict even after this one ends. So we're going to be talking about that and a lot more. Subscribe, click the notification button. We greatly appreciate all the time you spend with us. Plus, you can't get these types of videos anywhere else, as I have been covering geopolitical international developments and foreign policy for over 21 years. Way too long. And a lot of the stuff that we have told you was coming has sadly happened. Now, the situation is very complicated. It is very severe. And a lot is on the line right now for this global meeting where we are going to be seeing Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin facing off here, as Donald Trump has talked about how he will know if there is going to be a deal within the first 2 minutes of this meeting. All of this as Zelensky has tried to enter the conversation by saying, hey, can I come? And Putin and Donald Trump said, no, we do not want you to come. As a lot of people are reporting that Zelensky looks burnt out and tired, as right now we are getting reporting from Axios that Trump is telling Zelensky and European leaders that conceding Ukrainian territory will be necessary. As Donald Trump talked about, there's going to be some swapping of the land here. Some people said that there was a kind of interpretation by Witkoff, who met with Putin a couple days beforehand when it came to these kind of initial negotiations and conversations, as Donald Trump gave Putin a 50-day ultimatum, then he lowered it to a 10-day ultimatum, and at the end of that ultimatum, it was announced that the two leaders would be meeting in Alaska. Now, they're meeting in Alaska because previously they would meet in places like Switzerland. They're not meeting in Switzerland because Switzerland isn't neutral at this particular conflict. So isn't Europe. And Vladimir Putin, worried about a potential assassination attempt flying over Europe, said, let's do it in Alaska, a former Russian territory that was sold to the United States with a massive deal, which I think is representative and symbolic of what's kind of happening here with Russia and the United States making a deal, swapping land, as this is going to be, I think, a meeting met with a lot of symbolic gestures as well here, as Zelensky has now come out and said Putin is bluffing. He does not want peace, as he says that he held conversations with Trump and other European allies, telling them, hey, what's happening here will not lead us towards peace here. This is what he had to say.
I told President Trump and all our European allies, Putin is bluffing. He's trying to push before the Alaska meeting on all directions of our front line.
Now, it is convenient for someone who has been continuing this war to say this, as of course Zelensky has been acting on the behalf of a lot of Western-backed forces. The comments were made in Berlin here, as a lot of people will say, no, he just wants to continue this war, since of course this means that he's going to continue to stay in political power. That's the accusations that they're making, as some people are saying that there's going to be corruption uncovered after this conflict, after the dust settles from this war, that he's going to be held responsible for, and therefore he doesn't want this war to end. That's one theory out there. Another theory that he is kind of proposing here is that the Russians are having military successes and advances inside of Ukraine right now, and that when they're able to get rewarded for their conquest of Ukraine and they're able to get territory, they're just going to do it again. And they're going to either do it in Romania. Romania is like the new Ukraine that's kind of festering up here. We saw this situation festering in 2014. We talked about how this was going to spur on a war. And essentially, the war has already kind of started way before 2014. But that's when the first official shots were being fired between the Russian separatists and the Ukrainians as they were fighting and battling out in the Donbass region. Now, a very similar situation now is happening in Romania, where they're accusing the right-wing candidate who doesn't want war, who wants peace, who, of course, is also representing a kind of pushback against the globalist liberal order, a populist, was just arrested because and denied the ability to run for the presidency of the United States, as, of course, the investigation came out, there was no Russian collusion. And that was the main accusation against him. And they said, no, he can't become president. He's colluding with the Russians. It just came out that, of course, he wasn't. And that was disinformation. Now, what are the aspirations of Putin? I want to talk about that, but before I do, because there's a lot to talk about, especially in the context of my people, Polish people who dealt with Soviet aggression and domination for the past decades. And listen, we told you the negative side of Zelensky. I want to play devil's advocate and tell you how Zelensky might be right here, as well as how this conflict will be unfolding. But before I do that and a lot more, we wanted to remind you to sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple. The link is down in the description below. You click it, you go right here, bada bing, bada boom. You put in a little bit of information, you get emailed back a login, check your spam, and then you get access to, of course, the Telegram chat, which we are in right now talking. I asked everyone, hey, what do you want to see me talk about? People are giving me insight. People are having conversations about what's happening here. I'm a part of those conversations. You could be a part of those conversations with me for just 20 cents a day. We're trying to build community. We're trying to build networks of individuals as well as in real life meetups. We did nature hikes. We did range days. We did really cool explorations of cities like Gdańsk. And again, I cannot recommend this enough. The last meeting was really awesome. And I am working on right now with my friends who teach people how to defend themselves, another range day that we're going to be doing here in South Florida. Last time we did this 2 times already. It was so much fun. An incredible day out on the range doing some really advanced type of stuff here that is absolutely next level type of stuff here. So if you haven't signed up to LukeUnfiltered.com, now's the time to do it. And first come, first serve. The people who are the members the longest will get first access to our range day coming up sometime in late this month or early next month. So stay tuned for that as I do everything I can to make sure that you guys have the best experience as a member. 3 master classes, exclusive t-shirts, 13 plus years of videos about bettering yourself, bettering your sleep, how to work out, how to supplement, all of that, all on LukeUnfiltered.com. Now, let's get back here because there's a lot of things to talk about here, specifically with the developments that are kind of happening here on this front line. But let's finish off with Zelensky's comments here because I think they're important. And then we're going to give you his side of the story because we told you the counter narrative against him. Now we want to tell you his side of the story.
Russia wants to occupy the whole of Ukraine. This is his wish. And Putin is bluffing that sanctions is nothing and they don't work. In fact, sanctions are hitting Russian war economy hard.
If you look at the sanctions, they're predominantly, I have to disagree with Zelensky, they're predominantly helping out China and India. And again, the relations between India and the United States are being hindered since India is like, hey, China's buying Russian gas and selling it back to the Europeans. Why can't we do it? Why does China get a 45-day tariff ease? Why are we getting additional tariffs for doing something that other people are doing? As the BRICS nations are organizing here. Now, again, there's a full-on economic war against Russia. Now, is it affecting it? Russia has kind of moved towards a war economy, and they have moved towards better bilateral relations with BRICS nations, which we're kind of enriching by doing so. So far, the Russian war machine has been able to produce artillery faster, quicker, cheaper, and munitions faster, quicker, cheaper than the United States has. As some people are saying, that's really what's kind of going on here. As we're looking at the stockpiles, we're looking at all the missile systems, we're looking at all the munitions and saying, this long war of attrition that's lasting a long time, we're not going to win. And that's why there's going to be some concessions and negotiations. That's what some people are saying.
It's true. Russia has a lot of weapons.
See, even Zelensky admits it. Now, let's give Zelensky, let's give his side of the story here. He's saying, no, they're going to try to take all of Ukraine. There's also very interesting chatter from the Russians and Russian media personalities talking about, oh, Estonia, oh, Lithuania, oh, look at those countries right there that have a Russian population within them as well. Well, look at that. And if Russia realizes, okay, we got the advantage here, we got more people, right? NATO and the West are running low on stockpile on munitions. We have the war machine running. This is our time to take advantage of the situation. And there are conversations happening within Russia saying, yeah, don't agree to peace deal because we're winning. We're winning on the battlefields. Let's take more of Ukraine for ourselves. And Zelensky is arguing if Russia is able to successfully get rewarded for their war of aggression, they're going to start more war of aggressions. It would be foolish to think that that's not the type of conversations that are happening between Vladimir Putin, Medvedev, and his national security staff right now. Okay? Let's just be real with ourselves, because every country, every nation, it's like, hey, they did all these sabotage attacks on us. They're launching all these drones. They assassinated so many of our journalists and generals inside of our city centers. They terrorized us. Why should we give them leeway? As previously, Putin has described how he doesn't want to negotiate with terrorists anymore. Now, will this war of Russian aggression end? I hope so. But this is Zelensky's side of the story, and this is where he's coming from. This is what he's saying. Whether it's politically convenient for him or not, we do have to take what he's saying seriously.
Many times over than we have artillery, let's say, for three times more. But they sustaining 3 times more losses. And as said, it
3 times more losses. Again, now we saw Donald Trump kind of reissue these statements, and there hasn't been any kind of evidence suggesting that, other than these type of weird intelligence assessments saying, no, hundreds of thousands of Russians are dying and only like 2,000 Ukrainians are dying in this conflict. Again, that falls into the line of propaganda that we have seen from the West from the very beginning of this conflict, talking about the Russian meat wave attacks, which were wrong. Okay? If you look at the Russians here, okay, it's not just meat wave attacks. First, it's drones, and then they get a lay of the land. Then it's militarized and mechanized divisions kind of moving in here. And then the drones see where the fortification positions are, where the Ukrainians kind of go back whenever the armored machinery moves forward. And then they send in the Lancet drones that they got from Iran, that they're now building, adapting, changing the engines of, and changing the munitions of for specific capabilities. As now, fortifications, the whole battlefield, everything has changed. And Ukraine has been getting ready for this war ever since 2014. They started building the fortifications with the help of the CIA. CIA was there way before 2014. But 2014, they're like, okay, we got to get ready for this war. It's coming. All the fortifications that they did are futile, as of course, they're having to rebuild new fortifications meant specifically for drones. These Lancet drones that are very capable. These kamikaze drones that are very destructive, very powerful, and have been wreaking havoc. Then the armored columns, after the fortified positions are hit here, then the Russians come in, and of course that's when the fight continues on, and that's how they're able to conquer a lot of the kind of cities and towns, small cities and towns that civilians are not in. That has been how the conflict has been unfolding. Let's go back to Zelensky and finish off his kind of point of view and perspective here.
About it to our European friends, to President Trump, that Putin definitely does not want peace. He wants to occupy Ukraine. And we all understand that Putin cannot fool anyone.
Now, let's be honest with ourselves. What he's warning about is how this conflict could re-engage and restart at any moment, at any time. That would actually be more beneficial to the Ukrainians that would, of course, try to rearm unless there's a negotiation deal where they have to disarm. Will that actually happen here? Well, I think that's going to be, contested. That's going to be fought over. That's going to be one of the things that's going to be heavily negotiated here. As of course, they're talking about how Ukraine can't get into NATO, but they could potentially join the European Union, which, listen, with the way that things are going, anything and everything is kind of possible here. But that's what is at the heart of a lot of these negotiations, the territories, and the future to make sure that this conflict no longer goes on. The Ukrainians will be saying, no, we want to arm because we want a preventative measure to be adapted so we don't get invaded again. And listen, I think those warnings are warranted, mainly because if you look at the history of fighting stops and then it restarts again, especially after there's no clear definitive long-term plan for peace here, which needs to be established. And unless it's established, we could expect the Russian kind of conflict to kind of re-engage again. And it might, within the next few years, within a new political leadership of Ukraine or Russia, who knows? Vladimir Putin is very old. So I think his time is coming to an end, but he's also fortifying his kind of political legacy through Medvedev and other political leaders and other people below him that are actually more hawkish and more aggressive than he is. Okay? As Putin cares about Putin's empire and Russia's empire. Zelensky cares about his people.
We need future and further pressure and European and American sanctions against Russia. And together, our union of partners can stop war of Putin's. We spoke about the Alaska summit. We hope that the central topic will be the ceasefire, immediate ceasefire. President Trump was mentioning it many times. He suggested that after the Alaska meeting, we will have a contact and we'll discuss all the results, if there will be results, and we'll decide our next common.
Now we're going to see what happens here, but the Russian troops now are making advances right before this major meeting, which of course hinders the American, Western, European, and Ukrainian position here. And if you look at what's been happening here within the past 24 hours, the Russians have been making exceptional gains, especially in Pokrovsk, major battlefield that, again, a lot of people are saying looks extremely serious here. As History Legends, YouTube channel that I follow, that I think does great commentary on all this stuff, is even highlighting, it's just advanced in Pokrovsk. Is highlighting a very kind of severe situation for the Ukrainians, as there's a lot of significant manpower shortage, and there's also a big question mark about all the mismatched equipment that they have for this kind of long-term warfare, that the Russians have more of an advantage the longer it goes on. Therefore, this is why we have seen the Russian position change, talking about and propelling this kind of war of attrition against each other. Now, there's also reports of a Ukrainian ship carrying weapons that was just sunk by a Russian submarine. And again, lots of reports coming in here talking about the different advances, the different situations on the battlegrounds here. It's pretty clear here that the situation is not the best for the Ukrainians here. And for me, it would be to their advantage to try to get a peace deal here as quick as possible. And the people who have told them, no, you're going to win this, no, you're going to do great, I think are responsible for tremendous amounts of human harm that are despicable and disgusting. You look at what happened with Boris Johnson coming in there saying, no, don't sign that peace deal. If they would have signed that peace deal that was already agreed upon, Ukraine would have regained a lot of their territory. I would argue. There would have been a lot less significant life loss. And I think that's an important argument to make here in the face and the realization, because as soon as the dust settles, I think we're going to be shocked to find out the exact reality of this war here. Now, we have a lot of European leaders, a lot of NATO leadership coming out and saying, maybe we could recognize that there's going to be some kind of land swapped here, a part of a larger peace agreement here, which is big here. And a lot of people are saying, well, I think why we are being now open to this idea when previously it was quote a red line to the Ukrainians, the Europeans, is because when we look at the battlefield, when we look at the kind of hardened defenses, the years to prepare, the manpower, the military industrial complex of the Russians here, we're seeing, as some analysts are saying, the West just doesn't have the resources, the time, the money, or the patience to sustain it much longer. And this is why they are going to be making concessions to the Russians here. Now, this is what Donald Trump just had to say a few moments ago, talking about if there is not a big peace deal here.
Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
As people are saying, well, exactly what kind of consequences will there be? As a lot of people now are having some kind of questions about our involvement here in all of this, as clearly Donald Trump was elected because he promised to end this war day one. This war is going on. First, he put a lot of pressure on Zelensky. Then he put a lot of pressure on Putin. Now it looks like, almost 8 months into his administration, that hopefully there's going to be some kind of deal being made here. Otherwise, if there isn't a deal being made here, we're going to realize that this conflict is going to be far more nastier and destructive than it ever previously was before. And that right there is terrifying because we're dealing with a nuclear armed country. We're dealing with saber rattling. That is pretty serious. We're dealing with a situation where so many young Slavic men have already lost their lives. And I think that's only going to be exacerbated with a more drastic situation, as of course, drastic people take some very drastic measures. And that's the scenario and situation that we're in. Let's pray for peace. I hope it gets achieved. And I hope both sides sacrifice something. And I hope both sides get something. And I hope that we could leave the table understanding that there's going to be long-term lasting peace. That's what I hope for. If you hope for it as well, share this video. Again, we have been a very strong anti-war voice for our whole existence. I was protesting the Iraq War, doing independent journalism, uploading videos with DV tapes and Firewire cables way back in the day. We're still doing it today in a different way. And if you appreciate all of that work, all of that effort, all of our legacy that we have built, predominantly being anti-war, subscribe, click the notification button, and sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys doing that. And this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more, all here exclusively on YouTube.com/WeAreChange.